Thank you, Ranking Member Gosar. I want to thank Ranking Member Westerman, too. Thanks so much for putting this together today. And I want to thank Mr. Judd, Mr. Arthur, and Ms. Connor for joining us. Mr. Judd, I want to start with you. You had talked early on about the implications of President Biden's border policy, specifically Executive Order 14010, and the effect that it has on the safety of your agents protecting the border. We've heard all kinds of stories about the endangerment that happens not just to the illegal immigrants that are coming across the border, but also to your Border Patrol agents. Can you tell us about not only your safety concerns, but can you provide for us some of the harms that Border Patrol agents face as a result of the policies under Executive Order 14010?
So I'm grateful when people say that President Trump cared about Border Patrol agents. He cared about CBP officers. In reality, President Trump cared about the American citizens. He cared that we were able to do our job so that we could protect the American citizens. That was his focus. His focus was to protect the citizens of this great country. And by caring about us, he cared about that. What we've seen with the revocation of executive orders that worked in the past for new executive orders, it's put us in direct harm. We've had multiple agents that have died because of COVID-19. These agents, their deaths have been determined to be line of duty deaths, which means they developed COVID-19 while on duty, while dealing with people that crossed our border illegally, which obviously was incentivized by the Biden administration, getting rid of the catch and release program, not allowing us to send people back to Mexico. So we have actually had agents that have died because of President Biden's policies.
Mr. Judd, thanks. That's pretty sobering to understand the threats that they face, and that those threats from COVID, as well as others, have resulted in harm and, as you point out, loss of life. That's pretty sobering. Ms. Connor, again, I want to thank you also for joining us today. You mentioned in your testimony that each migrant leaves on average 6 to 8 pounds of trash in the desert. And we saw 2 abandoned vehicles and the other significant environmental impacts of this illegal immigrant traffic. How does this vast amount of waste affect Arizona? Obviously, you have to deal with gathering it up. You have to deal with landfilling it. All those are additional stresses on the system there in Arizona. And I just wanted to get a perspective from you about, what's the impact on the state of Arizona concerning how you deal with this, how you rehabilitate those areas that have been negatively impacted by these illegal immigrants?
It really depends on where this trash is located, whether it's on state land, whether it's on federal land, as to who can clean it up. But I mean, if you just look at those pictures, you see all of the trash littered. 6 to 8 pounds of trash is what each crosser is estimated to leave behind. And it can be anything from human waste, backpacks, plastic bags, and drugs, you name it. And the drugs, it's dangerous. If we've gotten to waterways, that's a huge concern. And also in Arizona, we have really bad wildfires, especially in Arizona alone. In fact, last year, 1 million acres burned in Arizona because of wildfires. And all of this fuel that's left in our desert can add fuel to wildfires, and that's a huge concern for us. So this is something that it's going to take the local, state, and federal officials to try to clean up all the trash that is left in our desert.
Thanks, Ms. Connor. Mr. Arthur, I wanted to turn to you. Ms. Connor had spoken about, the distinction between the impacts on federal lands and on state lands. I wanted to get your thoughts on the environmental health impacts specifically on federal land, and whether they're trash piles or, as we know, just what happens to the landscape there with erosion and watershed degradation, the impact on wildlife, the damages to infrastructure and property. What do you think are the most pressing threats the environment faces from the border crisis?
Mr. Wittman, as Ranking Member Westerman had alluded to in his statement, these are very fragile, or actually, Dr. Gosar, these are very fragile areas, and we protect them for that reason. There's a reason that the federal government has designated these areas for protection. When you have large numbers of individuals entering the United States illegally, tromping through these areas, disturbing the wildlife, disturbing the area, changing the topography of the land, it's a serious problem. If you were a United States citizen, if you were a tourist with your family doing that, there would be ramifications. But the fact is, this is one of those things that the United States government right now is facilitating through, as I mentioned before, the catch, release, and dispersal policy that the government currently has. So, those are extremely serious concerns. When they're gone, they're gone. We're not getting them back, at least not reasonably for a reasonable price. Those are a legacy for future generations to cherish and enjoy. They're not something that should be cast aside simply for a temporary and transitory policy.
Thank you, Mr. Arthur. Ranking Member Gosar, I yield that.